Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is post-match reaction showtime after Liverpool got back to winning ways this evening with a thumping 4-0 win over Crystal Palace at Anfield. And in terms of the performance, it was streets ahead of what we were put through in the game against Everton at Goodison Park on Sunday evening. It was back to the Liverpool of old, the Liverpool that we have been waiting for over 3 months to see now, the Liverpool that all season has been battering teams left, right and centre, and the Liverpool that is rightfully now 23 points clear at the top of the table and just two points away from their first Premier League title in 30 years. It could, of course, all be wrapped up tomorrow evening as Manchester City head to Stamford Bridge. If they don't win that game, then that will be curtains and that will be the title done and dusted. If not, we'll have to wait until Thursday, the 2nd of July, when we play against them at the Etihad. But in the meantime, let's just bask in the absolute brilliance of that Liverpool performance today. As I said, it was so much better than the one against Goodison Park. And for anyone that was worried about the way we played against Everton, I think this game and the way we played and the intensity with which we played as well entirely justified the way we came out on Sunday, simply because the players can't fly in and play the way they did today off the back of no games for 3 months, regardless of whether they played friendlies and stuff like that amongst the squad or against teams like Blackburn Rovers at Anfield behind closed doors and without the cameras and everything like that. They simply cannot just fly into a Premier League fixture, a competitive match, and play as they did all the way back before the lockdown started. That would be ridiculous, and if they did try and play like that, they probably would have picked up a lot more injuries and they wouldn't have been able to play like the way they did today. So, you know, they're vindicated in their approach with the fact that they just pressed so much quicker today. There was so much intensity. We were streets ahead of Crystal Palace in terms of fitness, and that does seem to be a gradually more and more recurring theme. I know it's early stages in the restart, but already there seems to be a bigger gulf between the big teams, and I don't just mean the teams at the top of the table, but the teams who have more money, who have, you know, stronger training facilities, who are obviously a little bit more advanced in terms of things like sports science. Those teams are probably going to be able to get through this period of the next 7 or 8 matches that everyone's got left a lot better than the teams that are further down the table, simply because they'll be able to manage the fitness of the players better. Liverpool were just fantastic today in terms of how we were able to chase down Palace, close the ball down. We created chances from minute one straight away in a way that we just didn't at Goodison Park. At Goodison, it took us about 22 minutes all the way up until the first drinks break to get into the game. From today, it was right from the off. The intensity was there. The intelligence of the passing was there. There weren't any sort of long, hopeless hoofs over the top or anything like that. It was clear that there were plans. That was also probably a result of the fact that we played pretty much our full strength 11 today. The return of Andrew Robertson to the side, the return of Mo Salah on the other side as well, just meant that we could stretch Palace in a way that we couldn't stretch Everton. We could play the kind of passing triangles on the left and the right between, you know, you've got the full-back, the midfielder on that side, and then the winger as well. Those little combinations that are normally so effective and can just pull defences this way and that, because all three of those players within the triangle, take for example Wijnaldum, Mane and Andrew Robertson, obviously they all get their own designated positions that they are world class in, but they can play the other positions with reasonable adeptness. Gini Wijnaldum can drop into left back as he did at the end of the game. Sadio Mane can come inside and almost play as a midfielder. Andy Robertson can bomb on and perform a role on the left wing, getting to the byline and getting crosses in and stuff like that. And it makes it so difficult for defences to actually even track the movements, because everyone's moving so quickly and they have an understanding that for them makes perfect sense, and they all follow it and they're all on the same wavelength and they can execute it quickly with one-touch passing and quick, sharp runs in a way that the opposition just cannot keep track of. And it's the same on the other side with Henderson, Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold as well. Trent Alexander-Arnold was a player who was just streets ahead in his performance today from the one we saw at Goodison Park as well. The free kick was sublime. The goalie gets nowhere near it. I think even if you put a better goalkeeper than Wayne Hennessy in there, he probably doesn't get anywhere near it, because it was just a fantastic, almost perfectly executed free kick from Trent Alexander-Arnold to put us 1-0 up. And it was a real bonus to get that lead, because while Liverpool did play brilliantly, we were still struggling to maybe carve out any clear-cut chances. And when we did, there was a little bit of rust in terms of the finishing. Gini Wijnaldum gets that one very early on where the ball drops so invitingly from in the box. He's only about 6 yards out or something like that, and he's got a moment to kind of adjust and take on the volley, and he completely shanks it wide. And that was kind of the theme of the first 20 minutes or so. But, you know, obviously the positive signs that we were able to create the chances kind of overrode any concerns that would have come through as a result of the players not being able to finish them. And of course, as we go into the game, the confidence starts to build. The players become more and more adept at both getting into those finishing positions and putting them away as well. And I thought I'm happy is the bottom line. I'm really, really pleased with the way Liverpool played today. Obviously, the second goal is fantastic as well. To get it right before half-time, Palace will have been desperate to get in with just the 1-0 lead, but Fabinho plays that beautiful ball over the top. The diagonal run from Mohamed Salah as well, timed to perfection to avoid getting caught in an offside trap or anything like that. Uses his strength to leave the defender for dead as well. It's such an underrated strength of Mo Salah's that he is just so powerful in terms of shrugging players off and being able to push them down, keep defenders off of his shoulder and still get through and take those chances. And he takes it with aplomb. He slams it past Wayne Hennessy, gives us that 2-0 lead, and it's not necessarily game over from there on in. You know, of course, Liverpool against Crystal Palace in a game that could pretty much secure a Premier League title. We all know how things can go wrong under those very certain circumstances. But once we went 2-0 up, with the way we were playing as well, Palace, of course, had that injury to Wilf Zaha, which affected them quite badly because, of course, even though he's not necessarily contributing defensively at all, it gives them a very, very solid outlet. They can lift the ball over to him and guarantee that they'll get at least 30 seconds respite by getting Wilfried Zaha to run at defences and try and create a chance and stuff like that. And they just did not get that respite at any point in the game, to be honest. There was no point where Palace had a strong spell of possession, where Liverpool sat off, where it felt like we weren't trying to create clear-cut chances. We were constantly going for the jugular every single time. It almost felt like a training exercise. It almost felt like the players were just trying to work their way through the game and constantly create chances, get themselves back into a rhythm. And as a result, they didn't want to, lift their foot off of the gas. They didn't want to take, get Crystal Palace out of that hold that they had them in. And it was very, very impressive the way they were able to go for the full 90 minutes. Even when the subs came on as well, Minamino came on, did a very, very good job. Nico Williams came on and was fantastic. I've rated the lad so highly ever since I first saw him play in the Liverpool shirt. But the way that he can get into the box as well, he's got so many of those traits that Trent Alexander-Arnold has got. He's very solid defensively, got a great engine, so he gets up and down the byline constantly, can whip a crossing as well. But the flip side is, I think he's actually, when it comes to coming inside and trying to get into the 18-yard box, he's almost better than Trent Alexander-Arnold, and maybe that's because he does it a little bit more often. But his close control with the ball, he has that moment, I think it's in stoppage time, where he gets that shot off on his left foot, and the way he just drags it and moves it round the Palace defender, the Palace defender barely even knows where Nico Williams is by the time he actually takes the shot, and we've seen that time and time again. He's done that in cup matches, and hopefully we can now see him do it on a more regular basis in the Premier League as well, because the kid is fantastic, and Trent Alexander-Arnold, as good as he is, at his age, you don't want to be running him into the ground. We don't want another Michael Owen situation where it all comes back to bite us later on in his career. We don't want to have a situation where we have to move him into centre mid, not because that makes tactical sense, but because he simply doesn't have the engine to carry on playing right back and carry on playing the right back, the role, the way that Liverpool want him to play. So having Nico Williams as a backup who can do the same things as Trent and also has his own abilities that maybe mean that he can almost put himself ahead of Trent in the pecking order for certain games if Jurgen Klopp so wishes. That is a fantastic asset for Liverpool to have, and this is going to happen more and more often, of course, with the way that the coronavirus has affected the financial situation of teams. They're going to try and promote through their academies more, and the huge benefit for Liverpool is we've already been doing that. We know how good Harvey Elliott is, we know how good Neco Williams is, we know how good Curtis Jones is, we know these players are good enough to start getting games to the first team, and now they are going to have a lot of opportunities to prove that they are good enough so that Liverpool do not need to dip their hands into their pockets. We don't need to go into the transfer market to try and find a player that suits our system and we can get for a reasonable fee. We can look at a lad that we've got who's already on the books, we don't need to pay any money, and he's already been trained up to fit into the kind of system that we're playing, and Nico Williams is an absolutely perfect example for that, because Liverpool are very particular with the way they use their right backs, and he fits into that mould brilliantly, and it was great to see him today, and hopefully we can see more of him over the coming weeks. But back to the goals that we scored as well. Fabinho's third was sublime, fantastic. He's done it before against Manchester City. Hopefully we see him do it plenty more times in Liverpool shirt. He had a brilliant game in general as well. That pass for Salah over the top of the defence is fantastic, perfectly timed, perfectly weighted, and then the shot is just phenomenal. I've got no words for it. I can barely explain how he even does that. I don't think I've ever hit a ball like that in my life. You've probably never hit a ball like that in your life. Most of us have probably never hit a ball like that in our life, if we are all being perfectly honest. The power, the speed, the drive of it, the way it's got no curl, no backlift. It just goes and goes and goes like an absolute missile into the corner of the net. Wayne Hennessy again, poor guy, left with absolutely no chance. And that's something important that Liverpool should be adding more to their game. Goals from midfield are very, very vital. As good as the attackers are, the front three are brilliant, and we can pretty much rely on at least one of them to get a goal in every single game. But goals from midfielders just have that extra dimension, not just in that they add to your tally in general, but they make those players in the centre of the park more of a threat. They drag centre halves out and midfielders to try and block shots, and as a result that can create space for players like Salah, Firmino and Mane to run in behind. So if Fabinho can really demonstrate that kind of thing on a regular basis, and the same goes for Wijnaldum and Henderson and Ox as well, I want to see it from all of those guys, then that is yet another weapon that we can have in our already pretty large arsenal. So yeah, I thought Fabinho was fantastic. His best performance probably since he picked up that injury back in November. You know, when he came back in February, he was, for want of a better word, a bit of a donkey. You know, he was always off the pace. He was always late into tackles. He didn't seem to be reading the game in the same way. He didn't quite look as fit, and he was a little bit off it as well in the derby, although he was perfectly fine for the way we were trying to play in that game. But today, he just ran the show at times from the centre of the park. And that midfield is so important to what I mentioned earlier. It's so important to the way that we just went for Palace constantly, recycling the ball, keeping on, trying to create attacks, moving those triangles around, quick sharp movements, pressing when we didn't have the ball and stuff like that. There was no moment where we took our foot off the gas, and the midfield is so integral to that. Players like Henderson and Wijnaldum deserve credit as well. Gini Wijnaldum, he did his typical performance today where, if I'm perfectly honest, I can barely remember anything he did. And generally when that happens with Gini Wijnaldum, you know he's played absolutely fantastically, because generally when that does happen with Gini Wijnaldum, you can't remember what he did, but you can remember that in the centre of the park we did everything incredibly tidily, nothing went wrong, and they serviced the rest of the team around the pitch absolutely brilliantly. So the midfield was brilliant today as well. And then the fourth goal is just sumptuous. I mean, it's really hard to say what was the best goal because they're all brilliant. You know, Trent's free kick, perfectly placed. Fabinho's strike, I don't think I've ever even seen a football hit like that, to be perfectly honest. And then the goal from Sadio Mane, the way Salah wins that ball, keeps it in play, lays it off to Firmino, who lays it off. Actually, no, it's Sadio who wins the ball. He lays it off to Firmino, who lays it off to Salah. And then that first time pass on his weak foot is ridiculous. The way it's weighted. He has to play it then as well because of the run Sadio Mane's making. Mane just about stays onside. He times his run to perfection. The movement and the diagonal and the way he gradually comes inside while also just belting past any Palace defender is brilliant. And it's timed to perfection. It's timed to perfection because he knows Mo Salah has that ability on his weak foot to hit that pass, which is weighted to perfection as well. It goes round the Palace defender. It's right into Mane's path. He doesn't have to break stride. He can do exactly what he wants to do, which is to take that ball, take another touch, run into the box, open his body up and just slot it into the bottom right corner. And that is what he does with aplomb, and it rounds off what was a brilliant Liverpool performance. It felt like the Liverpool of old. They also said on Sky Sports, and this surprised me, but I'm pretty sure it's true, the first time we've been 2 goals up at half time since December. Now, let me know in the comments below if you can think of any other game, but certainly I think in the league, I don't think we've had that kind of lead at half time, and it was just such a comprehensive performance. The perfect way to put to bed any doubts whatsoever that came out of the Derby game. I don't think I was, you know, anywhere near that camp of people who are going, oh, you know, City look good and we don't look that great. We played one game, it was the first game back, it was 0-0. That tends to happen in the Merseyside derby. This was the real Liverpool we saw today. This is hopefully the Liverpool that you are going to be seeing between now and the end of the season. It's the Liverpool we've been seeing all the way up until the league was slowed down and postponed and everything like that, and hopefully the Liverpool that goes into next season as well, because why stop at 19 Premier League titles? Of course, Man City look great, and that game on Thursday is going to be fantastic, the one in a week's time, to see exactly where both teams are at, because of course it's been a long time since Liverpool played Man City, and they have started brilliantly, but as we have seen today, so have we. Liverpool are back, and they are back with a 4-goal bang. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel in the past. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back soon with the pre-match content for the game against Man City. Until then, bye for now.